We've reached the halfway point of the 2023 college football season. So, where do we stand? How are we feeling about the Oklahoma Sooners with 6 games to go? We'll discuss that and so much more on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners. Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com. That's J-A-S-E medical.com. Thank you for joining us. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. The show is at Locked On Sooners, and thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Josh, it's that mid-season review time. We can look back on the previous 6 games, looking ahead to the next 6 games. The first question I want to ask you is this. How are you feeling about the Oklahoma Sooners based on what you felt about them going into the season? I know we're all feeling better about them, but are they even kind of at this point like surpassing expectations? Are we surprised at what they've done so far through the first 6 games?
I think to some degree, sure. Yeah, you have to be, right? Because not totally shocked because you thought it was a possibility, but for it to have transpired the way that it has. And oh, by the way, Texas, right, goes on the road and beats Alabama. That was not something that I thought was going to happen. I know others around the country did going in, but I wasn't expecting that in the offseason. Again, I think others were. I was not. And so all of that together, then for Oklahoma in the aftermath of Texas doing that and sort of staking its claim as a national player, again, thought it was possible, but a little bit surprised that, everything's come together as quickly and as nicely as it has for Oklahoma to some degree.
Yeah, the area I'm still the most surprised about is just the way that the defense is playing. I think we talked about it a lot in the offseason, that if they could make a jump, it would make them more competitive. Well, they've made a significant jump. You go from 99th in points per game, allowing 30 points per game in 2022, to allowing just 14 points per game through the first 6 games of the season, which has you at number 11 in the nation right now. You look at the yardage. I mean, they were 122nd in yardage allowed last year. This season, okay, it's not top 20, but they're 52nd at 352.8 yards per game. That's a significant difference. I mean, you can't have projected this big of a jump. I think we thought that if they got into the 50s, whether it was points per game or yardage allowed, that they'd become a contender. Well, that's what we're seeing. But still, I'm blown away by the significant jump. I thought a reasonable jump would have been, top 70, something like that. But to do what Brent Venables and this coaching staff have done in just 1 year time is pretty remarkable. And I think that is the biggest story of how this season has gone, is how well the defense has played, whether it's, only allowing SMU to score 11 points or holding Cincinnati to 6. Or shutting out Arkansas State in week 1. I mean, this defense is playing at a remarkable level, and then only to allow 23 points and 2 touchdowns to the Texas Longhorns, one of the better offenses in the league. So, man, I'm blown away. They've exceeded my expectations, even though I thought that they were going to be winning, and I thought that they would even beat Texas. I thought that they would contend. I still didn't think it was going to look this good after 6 games. I thought, okay, maybe if you can get them down to 20 points per game or 23 points per game, things would look a whole lot different. Well, they've even exceeded that, allowing just 14 points per game. Number 1 in turnover differential, number 1 in interceptions. That's going to win you a lot of football games right there.
Yeah, I mean, if you are great in the turnover department, can be a big-time equalizer. And as you mentioned, Oklahoma total defense-wise is middling, right? 50th nationally is obviously not perfect. There's room to improve there. And yet, a lot of that, or, a nice little chunk of that is from this past contest versus Texas, where they eclipsed 500 some odd yards. So, and with what's left on the schedule, Kansas will be difficult, but on paper, not just a bunch of world beaters offensively. So I guess what I'm saying is the final total defense number will look a lot better, I think, for Oklahoma once we get to the regular season's finish line. Right now, you're kind of at that midway point. And, oh, by the way, you're just coming off of a game where Texas is one of the nation's best offenses, I think, with its skill, talent, and a good quarterback in Quinn Ewers. And the bottom line is the key categories defensively. The most important one, of course, is scoring defense, as you touched on. You're 11th there. The turnovers are great. But why is that the case for Oklahoma, that the scoring number is what it is defensively? Well, we talked about it all offseason. Oklahoma, can you be better in key moments? The turnovers, of course, as we've discussed, but third down defense. Oklahoma's 12th there nationally.
Nice.
Red zone defense. Oklahoma's 9th there nationally. And, oh, by the way, that, I meant to mention this the other night when we were doing our live show, and I don't think I did. For any Texas fan that wants to sit there and say, oh, well, we played our C game and Oklahoma played this game or that game, and that's, a big reason why actually, the numbers indicate that Texas played the exact game that Texas plays, which is they're not a very good red zone offense nationally, and Oklahoma's a very good red zone defense. So in some ways, the game played out as the numbers indicated the game would play out. And that's one big area that Oklahoma has made a defensive jump. And again, it translates into the scoring defense numbers, John.
Yeah, the other area that I feel like has been significantly better than what I maybe would have expected, and that's the play of Dillon Gabriel. I came into the season thinking he was a good quarterback and thinking that Oklahoma could win with him. I didn't necessarily think he was going to be a Heisman contender, even if they won a bunch of games, just because I felt like, okay, the reputation isn't really there. It doesn't really have a lot of buzz around his name. I didn't necessarily think that they were going to throw for a bunch of yards like they've done, because I thought the running game was going to be a lot better. And that could be one of those negative returns on expectations, is the run game. But I mean, he's played so well. And I mean, you don't win that game Saturday without him. And he's thrust himself into a legitimate contender in the Heisman race. I mean, he went from like plus 2,000 to plus 1,200 after the win against Texas. That's a significant jump in Heisman odds. A lot of places you're seeing him now 4th or 5th, where he might have been like 8th, 9th, or 10th before. So he's been really, really good. And I think that's been a pleasant surprise for a lot of people. Now, there are going to be people that want to nitpick every single throw, and I get that. That's your prerogative. You can do that. But based on the body of work for 6 games, I've been really pleased with the growth of Dillon Gabriel. You talked about the third down defense, red zone defense. They've been better at third down offense, red zone offense. His run game has gotten better. I feel like we highlighted it a couple weeks ago here on the show that his middle of the field passing and deep passing has improved as well from last year. And that's why you're seeing a significant improvement in just the offensive efficiency and productivity. It's because Dillon Gabriel raised his game.
The numbers bear that out. Again, key third down, red zone, all that sort of stuff. But I'm looking here. This is team passing efficiency from NCAA's, the NCAA side's stat book, right? Air Force, okay, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to strike you from number 1 in the record books with only your 19 pass attempts, with all due respect. You are not going to be number 1 in this particular ranking. But after that, you got the nation's best offenses, right? You've got Washington, USC, Oregon, LSU, Oklahoma, right? There's OU. And that's, of course, because of Dillon Gabriel, who, oh, by the way, you go over and look at the quarterback rating numbers in college football for eligible passers, and there's Dillon Gabriel right behind Michigan's J.J. McCarthy and right behind Washington's Michael Penix Jr. And, oh, by the way, in front of Jaden Daniels, and in front of McCord from Ohio State, in front of Uiagalelei from Oregon State, and yes, in front of names like, I don't know, Caleb Williams and Drake May out there. So he's playing incredibly, incredibly efficient, terrific football right now. I mean, there's no other way to say it. He's valuing the football. He had a Heisman type drive the other day. I mean, that kind of game, That's what we always look for, is a Heisman moment. Dylan Gabriel delivered in a Heisman moment.
Yeah, he's been delivering at a pretty impressive level all season long, especially since Big 12 play began. I mean, that was a thorn in their side last year. When Big 12 play began, the offense didn't look as crisp, the defense wasn't as good. They've passed every single test, 6-0, and are going to be able to control their own destiny for the Big 12 title and potentially a college football playoff berth. We'll talk some midseason review awards, offensive player, defensive player of the year, surprises, breakout players, all these things here after the break.
Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jace Medical offers the Jace case. The Jace case, what is it? Well, it provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you peace of mind so that you're not just hoping that you're prepared and you have access to medication in the case of an emergency, in the event of an emergency. No, you know that you have access to those necessary life-saving medications. Jace Medical, they make sure that you have that medication in hand. And oh, by the way, Jace Medical, it's simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and to ongoing consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Get $20 off today, by the way, as well. Get $20 off these life-saving antibiotics from Jace Medical by using our code Locked On at checkout. That's LOCKEDON at checkout over at jacemedical.com. That's Jace, JASE medical.com.
Okay, Josh, let's start with some awards. Let's go MVP off the top. Who has been the team MVP for the first 6 games of the 2023 season?
I think there's a case to be made for Dylan Gabriel, no doubt. And a lot of that being what we just discussed mere moments ago with the efficiency numbers and the quarterback rating and oh, by the way, the drive, right? As it's probably affectionately going to be known versus Texas going forward. But it's Danny Stutzman. He's the MVP of this football team right now. I was watching the video circulating its way around the interwebs tonight of Danny Stutzman saying, you know, Oklahoma fears only one thing, and that's God, and Texas fears Oklahoma. He's that guy before the football game, telling, rallying his troops in that respect. And he's the guy that doesn't just go say it. He's the guy that goes and backs it up with Butkus type play. And when you've got that guy that's got his nose right in there in a goal line stop of 4 different plays, a goal line stand for Oklahoma, when that's your leader defensively, and oh, by the way, it comes on the heels of what has been a lot of bad historically bad for OU just last season with a lot of this same personnel, John. But over the last however many years has not been great, right? Defense has not been the calling card for Oklahoma. It's been an offensive program. It's been a skill position program. Danny Stutzman is if you want to call it a Mount Rushmore, right now you can remove 3 other faces off Mount Rushmore because right now it's Danny's Mount Rushmore that's leading this thing for Oklahoma in terms of this defensive resurgence. Not to say there's not other key contributors involved. It's just, I think his presence to me, John, is that influential in this thing going the direction it's gone. So it's Danny Stutzman right now.
I mean, he's the face of the defensive resurgence. I mean, it's Brent Venables' defense, Ted Roof's defense. The assistant coaches have a big hand in this, but the guy that's at the tip of the spear for this defense, it's Danny Stutzman. He's the guy that everybody takes their kind of cues off of and keys from. And I mean, he's the emotional and the physical leader for this team, and he's been phenomenal. He absolutely has been phenomenal. And I wouldn't necessarily argue with you on that point. I think Dylan Gabriel, you could make a strong case for MVP as well with the way that he played, especially the way he played against Texas. It's great to have these kind of debates because it just goes to show that you have several guys playing at a really high level. If Dylan Gabriel's not the MVP of the team, he's most definitely the offensive MVP of this team, a unit that you expected to have a pretty good run game, and it's not really materialized just yet. Now, you might be able to start getting some things going over the second half, but through the first 6 games of the season, Oklahoma's run game has been pretty mediocre. Aside from, a big game from Tommy Walker against SMU and the Dylan Gabriel run game, you haven't really seen much. And so Dylan Gabriel, for the most part, has kind of had to carry this team to a 6-0 record. And I think most people would expect, if you're having to lean on Dylan Gabriel, if I had to ask you, hey, this team is leaning on Dylan Gabriel in the preseason, most people would probably expect this team to have lost 1 or 2 at this point, and they haven't. They're 6-0, and they've got all the things out there in front of them. Let's talk breakout player, Josh. Who would you say has been your breakout player so far this season?
There's so many names you could go with in that regard, because so much of this to me in terms of Oklahoma going and winning that game versus Texas, even though the total yardage surrendered maybe doesn't show that, the turnovers, right? The goal line stand. It really just, you beat Texas the other day, John, and that's symbolic of where we kind of feel this thing is going for Oklahoma. And it's all wrapped up in this defensive turnaround for the Sooners, why they believe they're going to go win the Big 12 championship now, why they think that they can probably start attacking some loftier goals than that. I'm going to stick with the defensive side of the football, and I'm going to go with Gentry Williams with what he's doing defensively, covering guys out there, the physicality that he's bringing, coming downhill, tackling as well. He's got 15 tackles right now, which isn't a ton, but for, a corner is not all that bad. And by the way, it's like 15 loud tackles, right? I mean, it's like he has 15, but I feel like he's had 35 because typically when he's coming downhill to wrap somebody up or up in them, he's doing so with authority. So he's been, man, just a massive difference maker for OU and the makeup and the outlook defensively.
I mean, he's 3rd on the team in tackles for loss, which a cornerback registering that many tackles for loss is pretty impressive. Again, I don't think I can argue with you on that one. I'm going to throw a name out there, and it's going to be weird because now he's done for the season, but Andrew Anthony, I think he was kind of the breakout player of the first half. We didn't really know what we were going to get out of him. He hadn't really had a whole lot of production at Michigan during his time there. You weren't hearing a ton of buzz about him in spring ball and fall camp. We were focusing on a lot of other guys, and here came Andrew Anthony leading the team in receiving for the first 6 weeks of the season. It sucks that he's now injured and lost for the year, but I mean, what a breakout performance he was having. I mean, he was going to flirt with 1,000 yards this year. And I mean, you needed somebody to step up in the early going again, as the run game wasn't really materializing and Jaleel Farouk was having some up and down performances. Andrew Anthony really, he showed out, and he gained a lot of respect from a lot of people. And that's why the injury was such a bummer, because he was playing such great football. I'll go with another name on the defensive side of the ball, and that's Jaren Kanak. After last year when Brent Venables kind of called him out and said he doesn't really know what he's doing, and we kind of all shrugged it off and laughed it off, but might have been the case. He's really come on strong this year. And yeah, there's some areas where he can continue to get better, but again, led the Sooners in tackles against Texas and continues to get better every single week. You just see him flying around, and he's been one of Oklahoma's better pressure players at times in the 6-0 start too, getting to the backfield, getting pressure on the quarterback, and then just flying around and using that speed and athleticism to get to the sideline and bring running backs down before they're able to make any positive headway. So I think you could name a ton of guys on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, I think we're seeing Dasan McCullough now that he's started for a couple of games. He's really starting to come on strong. You mentioned Gentry Williams, Billy Bowman. I mean, he was good at times last year and good at times the year before that, but I really feel like he's starting to really find himself now, and he's finding some comfort level in the position that he's playing, and he's playing great football. The guys on the interior, you don't hear their names called a lot, and they're not racking up a bunch of stats, but Isaiah Coe and Jordan Kelly and Jonah Laula, again, you mentioned it. There's so many dudes that you could talk about having breakout years. It's insane. And that's the big reason why this team is so much better, is because top to bottom, everybody's playing at a much higher level. Key Lawrence, that's another guy that you could talk about having a breakout season. He's had moments, in the 2021 and 2022 season, but this year it's coming all together for him and looks like a guy that's playing the best football of his life.
Well, and that would be the next award I would have tossed your direction is who's most improved for Oklahoma, with the understanding that, okay, let's remove Danny Stutzman's name from the equation, because I think that would be an easy slam dunk choice, right? Dylan Gabriel, right? Similar story there. Remove his name because that's, again, I kind of low hanging fruit choice. Anybody else that really jumps to mind from last year to this that has made the type of jump that has led to this type of start for Oklahoma?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably go with Key Lawrence just because I feel like he's made a significant jump. You got Peyton Bowen, you got Reggie Pearson in the offseason, and for the most part, everybody was really, really excited and eager to get those two guys on the field, and maybe not so much Key Lawrence, but at every single turn, whether it was Ted Roof or Brandon Hall, they always made sure to bring us back to Key Lawrence. And his veteran presence and leadership and the playmaking ability is showing out this year. And maybe it was the fact that, okay, 2020, he's with Tennessee. 2021, he's in Alex Grinch's defense. 2022, in the first year of Brenton Venables' defense. 2023, that's the first time that he gets to be in the same defensive system 2 years in a row since high school. Like, when was the last time he got to play in the same system for 2 years? And so it's only understandable that he's now, okay, yeah, I'm comfortable. I can play fast. I can play instinctually. I don't have to second guess everything I'm doing because I know what I'm doing now, just like a lot of guys on the defense. And so we're seeing Key Lawrence take his game to a whole nother level. Man, I think there's so many names, Gentry Williams, obviously going from not starting, not really even playing a whole lot in 2022 to now being a significant member of the defense. Who would it be for you?
A lot of those names that you mentioned, I think Nick Anderson, right, is offensively an easy name to look at with what he's doing. I mean, my goodness, the guy catches the game winner, right, in the Red River game. But it's more than that, right? It's not just, hey, one catch into a situation to where he was pressed into duty and found himself in the right spot at the right time. I mean, it's larger than that. The growth for Nick Anderson, and it's obvious and it's tangible. So that's the beautiful thing about this team is with us at the midway point. So defensive player of the year, I think, is probably going to wind up Danny Stutzman, right? Offensive player of the year, probably going to be Dylan Gabriel. But if you said, okay, hey, how's this thing going to shake out for most improved player award? That could still be a number of different names by the time we end the season. Freshman of the year, the obvious choice right now is Peyton Bowen, and probably maybe that's going to be the case. But I don't know if y'all saw Caden Green the other day. He's going to be making, I think a frantic charge for that award. PJ Adebawore, I don't think his story's done this season. So, like newcomer of the year, most improved by season's end, freshman of the year. That's what's so exciting about this Oklahoma team right now is there's plenty of shuffling in a positive direction of the deck. I think that's going to happen between now and when we get to the finish line.
Yeah, there's not just one or two guys on either side of the ball that you're having to lean on. It's everybody playing really, really good football right now. And you have to get to a 6-0 start. Last thing we're going to touch on is we're going to go around the Big 12 and check in on its craziness that happened over the weekend. We'll do that here after the break.
Check out PrizePicks, ladies and gentlemen. PrizePicks, it's the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. PrizePicks, again, it's really simple to play. You can make your picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds, which, hey, you're on the go, right? Everybody's on the go. That's the world we want to live in. Is I want to have some fun with PrizePicks, but I don't want to take up a bunch of my time. Well, that's going to be the case with PrizePicks, in and out if you so need to, or if you really are like me and you're just going to agonize over final selections, well, you can do that as well. PrizePicks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. Check out PrizePicks, prizepicks.com. /LockedOnCollege and use our code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That is prizepicks.com /LockedOnCollege. Use our code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100.
Okay, Josh, the Big 12, it's crazy right now. Oklahoma State knocks off Kansas State. Kansas State doesn't look good in the loss. Will Howard turns the ball over 3 times. Iowa State beats TCU up in Ames. Then you've got Texas Tech walloping Baylor, Kansas walloping UCF. What was the biggest surprise to you over the weekend?
I think it's still what Oklahoma State did versus Kansas State. But yeah, I mean, there's a couple of peculiar names and results there, right? If you're of the opinion that TCU is a halfway decent team, well, okay, now you're probably rethinking that a little bit. Just the dominance of which Kansas was able to do what they did to UCF after, again, really falling apart in the second half versus Texas. So the week to week, what did we just witness is kind of crazy in the league right now, outside of really the top between Oklahoma and Texas. The rest of it's, kind of hard to get a read on. Texas Tech has looked really, really bad. And then, against, a Baylor team that we think is outright bad, they looked really, really good. So I guess, how much are you taking away from that? I don't know. I want to still believe K-State is the third best, maybe second best team in this conference when it's all said and done. Leaning more toward it's going to be OU Texas rematching in Arlington, and leaning toward the idea that I don't know if K-State's the number 3 team right now, right? I mean, thought that they had a chance to be in that, top notch, maybe play for the conference championship game and go defend the thing this year, but that's a bad team away from home right now with the Missouri loss and obviously with what happened versus Oklahoma State. I kind of tend to think that they'll get the ship righted, but again, I need to see Kansas State show me that they're capable of doing that away from home.
Yeah, I think outside of Oklahoma and Texas, the next 3 through 14 teams is up for grabs. Like every spot could be different the next week. I mean, West Virginia, they're 2-0 in Big 12 play. They beat Texas Tech. They beat TCU. They're going to have a chance to go and beat Houston this next week. And I mean, their defense is playing good football, but offensively, they're hard to trust. Oklahoma State, I have no idea what to make of Oklahoma State. And I think the same could be said for everybody else in the Big 12, except for Oklahoma and Texas. It's going to be a wild, wild ride over the next 6 weeks or so. If you were to guess a team that, okay, maybe it's Kansas State, maybe it's Texas, but take Texas and Kansas State out of the equation. Is there somebody else that could potentially challenge for that, Big 12 title spot outside of Oklahoma?
If you told me that Jalen Daniels was going to actually play, then okay, maybe you could talk me into that. But again, the Pete Thamel report today is doubtful again versus Oklahoma State. And, with Devin Neal and what they were able to do was very impressive versus UCF. I think my next pick would be Kansas. But again, I feel like with Bean, there's only so high the ceiling can go versus, with Daniels, okay, you got a chance maybe to run the table, even with, a home date versus Oklahoma, though that would, of course, be a big-time upset.
Yeah, I think there's just no telling how the rest of the season is going to play out. Maybe Oklahoma State found something, and they're going to actually be a more serious threat down the stretch than what we thought. Same with Texas Tech. Maybe they'll threaten Texas a little bit later on down the road. Who knows? But right now, I mean, it's all up for grabs. Bowl spots are going to be up for grabs. I don't think anybody's safe except for maybe Oklahoma and Texas the rest of the way. But we'll find out. We'll see how it all goes. But thanks so much for being a part of Locked On Sooners. Subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, we're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners, and we'll be back with more bye week coverage And then we'll start getting you ready for UCF the following week. The Dylan Gabriel Revenge Tour continues. But that's going to do it. Until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams, Boomer Sooner.